city mortuary roundabout, so that we can actually ascertain if this is a good alternative route. And also past the city mortuary roundabout doesn't also look that bad, moving clearly fast. So again, what this means is that if you are coming from Langata Road, then clearly this is just one of those good alternative routes that you may want to use. But that's where I want us to close the traffic. This first link, this early morning hour, our focus has just been on Bagathi. We're probably in the next link up segment, we'll be trying to look at some other roads and also try to look at some other alternative routes for you, our viewers. That brief from our traffic marshal A1 Doreen Arwange, bringing us up to speed to discussing our interaction, to have our main discussion this morning, which is sexual reproductive health rights. The question is, do the youth know their sexual reproductive health rights? And are parents or guardians talking to their children about this? Then what is the importance of this particular talk? Just giving us a backgrounder is that there's been an alarming increase of teenage pregnancies as well as gender-based violence. Just to read but an excerpt of a story that one of the local dailies has captured is that 3 murders in hospital compound terrify Gilgil. Now, the residents of Gilgil Sub-County Hospital staff quarters are grappling with 3 bizarre, murders in the last 12 hours. 2 children were poisoned with a deadly orange and a nurse was stabbed to death. Now, according to Councillor Catherine Wanjohi, she says that the general violence and domestic violence has risen sharply across the country since COVID-19 was identified, and more than 4 months ago. Now, she says that children and women are the most affected during this time due to the stress. Now, due to the ongoing pandemic that has seen people lose their jobs, we have recorded violence targeting women and minors who are considered weak and vulnerable, and the trend is worrying. Last week, we were talking about the issue of teen pregnancies and what we can do both at individual level, community level, and also government level to just stem this increase of teenage pregnancies. This morning, we want to tackle the issue of sexual reproductive health rights and how then this can affect the current situation, or rather change the trajectory in relation to issues of teenage pregnancy, gender-based violence, forced early marriages, and such. I will be joined by different participants who are spread across the country to give in their input, both on a personal level and also with their expertise having dealt with these issues. I would want to briefly introduce them. Joining me live. Now, we will be joined by this guest live in not long. Yes, you can see them there. Different gentlemen there and women who are going to be participating in this conversation that we are having this morning in light of, the current development, teenage pregnancies, issues of gender-based violence. Is this the right time then to discuss this issue that has been viewed as taboo? And as much as we are in the 21st century, parents, guardians alike, and even systems have found it difficult to adequately address this issue. Introducing my first guest, Steve Owiti, who is an MCA from Kisumu County. Steve, joining me live. Steve, good morning.
Thank you so much. I'm following on Amin. I want to welcome our viewers this morning as we discuss this important topic that has really affected our children. Now that we are even home, I want to believe it's very important to be part and parcel of this and talk to our parents and especially the whole nation so that we can come out in our numbers. I think because of the increase in gender-based violence, I think it's necessary that as parents, we need to take most of our time to talk to the children and ensure that some of the problems that are now facing them can be handled. And I think we've had this several times. Thank you so much for inviting me for the show.
Thank you very much for that brief interview there, Steve Owiti, who is a member of County Assembly from Kisumu County, saying that it's a high time that we had these conversations. Before I let you go, Steve Owiti, and I know you're going to be with us during the course of this particular show, from where you sit as a leader, do you think the time is right to start having these conversations in regard to the sexual reproductive health rights? Remember, this bill has already been, gazetted, but we're still finding it very hard to disseminate the information contained therein. How then, from where you sit, are you going to enable, access of this information, enable your constituents get access to this information?
Thank you. I want to say that it's important. The conversation has been going on for quite some time, and we've had different perspectives. One, the perspective of the church, where a number of church institutions have not been very comfortable with the discussion, especially in our schools. I think it's time that we have to come up with a way and a formula, a message that is packaged so well that our children are able to be given the same information in time or on time. One, you realize that as we speak, some of the things that we avoid discussing with our children are things that they're already aware of. And a lot of things are happening around us. When you look at the broadcast media or the television and the rest, they listen and watch quite a number of things. And as parents, it's necessary for us now to accept that some of the cultural practices that we used to have, that we have been practicing, that has already barred us from discussing some of these things with our children, will no longer be relevant. So I think we must come up with a way. I always say it's good to encourage people to be involved in this conversation, but we must have a holistic discussion. The message that we don't only want to talk about sexual activities. We want to talk about sex, gender, as per se, so that our children can be able to learn and understand who they are. They'll be able to take some of the challenges. And as legislators and as the county assemblies, we need also to join this conversation very strongly, so that we'll be able, at each and every county level, we are able to come up with, because counties are representing different cultural backgrounds or cultural practices. So as counties, we love to look at the whole law that has already been created and also come up with our own customized legislation that will be able to kind of look at the cultural practices we have, so that when we go into our schools and the rest, we'll be able to package the information that does not in any way have conflict with our cultural practices. Because sometimes this discussion or this conversation is not able to go on properly simply because of the cultural interests and the faith, the beliefs that we have.
Thank you very much. Steve Owiti, who is live from Kisumu, is a member of County Assembly, saying that you need to have a holistic conversation and not just focusing on about the issue, the act, the Sexual Intercourse Act, but just talk about other issues that are around matters of sexual reproductive health. And just to mention but a few, what this contains is that components of reproductive health include reproductive health itself, adolescent health, maternal health, contraception, sexually transmitted infections, abortion, FGM, and child forced marriages. All that are encompassed within reproductive health. Now, roping in our expert this morning, that is Esther. I'm joined live by Esther, who is an expert, to just share, her insights in regard to the Sexual Reproductive Health Rights Bill in its current form, having that now it has already been gazetted. Good morning, Esther. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Great to have you on board. Continue,
yes,
please.
I think it's a step in the right direction, because finally we can all read from the same page in terms of parents and other stakeholders. I think for a long time we've expected schools or churches or mosques to be the ones that are spearheading this conversation, with parents taking a secondary role. But now that we can have one unified voice and be able to speak together and to share the same message, I believe that just because parents aren't speaking doesn't mean their children are not listening. And just to allude to what has already been said, we need to speak, and we need to customize it, taking into consideration our cultural beliefs, where we are from, because these can be hindrances in children actually hearing what needs to be heard.
Esther, just let me interject
yes.
that. Thank you for that. We'd want to know where you're live from. We had
I'm
Steve
live from Mombasa.
Mombasa. That is Mombasa
Yes.
County represented there in our conversation this morning. You've mentioned something very important, the need that parents and guardians are not speaking, so the youth are not listening. Then how then do we bridge the gap, and whose role is it to discuss these matters of sexuality, especially with adolescents and young people? Because we looking at the current statistics, that's where the main challenge is. Then whose role is it, especially within the social strata, to have these conversations?
I'd just like to clarify, just because the parents aren't speaking doesn't mean the youth are not listening. Just because there's a void there, then they're looking for information elsewhere. And the danger with that is that the information might not be entirely true. So you'll have a bit of truth and a bit of, if I could call it, lies. So they'll believe one thing, but it's not clear as it should be. I think a challenge that we're having is in this current season of Corona, because they cannot go to the places where they would actually get information freely in a way that it's broken down to them. I do believe that this conversation needs to be had in different places with a unified voice. So the parents need to speak, the church and the religious leaders need to speak, as well as the schools as well. But now that our children are home, parents need to pull up their socks, because they're the only hope that we have for this season.
Now, we've had a lot of criticism of this particular bill, or rather in matters of sexual reproductive health rights and the access to knowledge and such. One of the factions that has been totally great critics of this issue is the religious sect, saying that this is a little bit too much. But then the question is, when is the right time to have these conversations? Age-appropriate information to suit that particular demographic.
Okay, I think sometimes we want to contextualize it, but we miss the point, because a girl who is 10 or 11 and has already started menstruating, that means her body is physiologically ready to carry a baby if she has intercourse with a man. So I think we need to place it to bear in terms of scientific facts, that you have reached this stage and your body is able to make a baby, you are able to sire a baby. So what can we do? What are the decisions that we can make? I do believe that the conversation could be tailored a bit differently for different age groups, but I think sometimes in shielding our children by not wanting to give them accurate information, not too much information, but accurate information, then we leave a gap that can be filled by different other voices.
Thank you very much, Esther. We'll be coming back to you shortly after we've just introduced a guest on our panel this morning. My next guest is joining me live next in this conversation to just put matters of sexual reproductive health rights into perspective. Today we're asking those questions. Do the youth know their rights? And are parents talking to their children about this particular issue? And what is the importance of this talk?
Yeah.
And how then will all having this conversation help change the trajectory currently? We have an increased number of teenage pregnancies. We have increased number of gender-based violence. There's the issue of FGM, as well as early forced child marriages. My next guest, that is Mutua. Good morning, Mutua. How are you?
My name is Donalo.
Good morning, Mutua. How are you? Tell us where you're live from.
I'm very fine. Thank you very much. I'm live from Nakuru County.
Thank you very much. Nakuru County represented. Now, what do you think about, is the time right to have these conversations out in the open? When there was debate at the floor of the House in Parliament, very many people, critics came out and said that children do not need to know such issues. The religious sect had its own, or rather faction had its own criticism of that particular bill. But now that we find ourselves in this situation, increased number of teenage pregnancies, gender-based violence, issues of child forced marriages. Is this the right time to have these conversations? And to borrow what Esther has said, is that we need to have scientific facts put out there and also tailored conversations. What is your take in that regard?
My take in this is not only the right time, but this ought to have started as soon as yesterday, because I think these are very pertinent issue that if we bury our heads in the sand, I don't think we are going to have very good results. So
well, it seems we're having a bit of a technical issue there with your feed, Mutua. I don't know if it's on your end or our end, but that's the kind of conversation we're having this morning. So what topics should adolescents and young people be taught in as far as matters of sexuality, and at what age? That is our current line this morning. What topics should adolescents and young people be taught on matters of sexuality, and at what age? What is the right age to have these conversations? My next guest this morning, thank you very much. Kindly give us a brief introduction of where you are live from and your occupation, please.
My name is Martin Lunalo.
Thank you. Martin Munaro, from where?
I'm also live from Nakuru, and I work for reproductive health, youth-friendly and environmental conservation, that's RIFE. And it's true that our young children are very much involved in issues of early sex that has contributed to a lot of issues when it comes to reproductive health services across this country. And I can just say that the reproductive health bill that we have in the Senate by
Martin, we are coming to you shortly. It seems we have a mix-up of our picture and sound there, but thank you for that feedback. And you've just opened up these conversations as to where our children are already engaging in appropriate relations in as far, as reproductive issues are concerned, and it's the high time we address this issue. We want to remind you that the next conversation, we are talking about the youth and sexual reproductive health rights. Are they aware of their rights? And are parents and guardians talking to the children about these issues? And if they're not, what is hampering, or rather, stopping this communication? What is the importance of this talk? And then, if we have this conversation, do we have systems in place to ensure that the future of our children are secure in light of the current circumstances? High number of teenage pregnancies, issues of gender-based violence, child forced marriages. We had a case, and we've been focusing on the issue of that is happening in Busia, where children are trading in sexual favors to purchase sanitary towels. Dropping in my guest this morning, that is Martin Munaro, who we could only get a sound earlier on. Good morning, Martin. Now we have you on set. Thank you very much. How about you just start off where we left from? Now, what topics from where you sit, what topics should adolescents and young people be taught on matters of sexuality, and at what age? What is your opinion? Martin, we see you. So my question to you is, in your opinion, at what age should we have these conversations between adults and young people?
My opinion will be that immediately when these children are at adolescent age, when they start the issues of menstrual, or when they are ready in terms of they are sexually active, that's the right time that this information is supposed to be given to these young people. And we don't need to bury our heads in the sand when it comes to matters of SRHR. Because one, most of our young people are getting lost because they have no information, or no one is willing to speak out this information to them. So at that time, if we get this opportunity to speak out to the young people on some of the key issues that are affecting them through reproductive health, under reproductive health issues, I think it is the best time to start introducing this concept. Let us not wait until these young people are at the age of 17 or 16 years. The right time is immediately when they are sexually active.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin Monaro, for that feed. You think that the appropriate age to have this conversation about sexual reproductive health rights is the adolescent stage. We will be joining you in not too long, since after we've rectified this issue of your feed. I still have several gentlemen and women and ladies who are waiting to join in, wade in into this conversation. Now, Karuga joins me live. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Karuga. I can see Nakuru is well represented. I'm also live from Nakuru County.
It's good to have you on board.
Thank you. So my day-to-day work involves working with young people. I work with an organization called Family Health Options Kenya. Our work involves providing sexual reproductive health and rights services to the young people, and also dissemination of comprehensive sexuality education among young people in schools and out of schools. So that is basically what we do. And we are so much passionate about adolescent sexual reproductive health.
So from where you sit, you're exactly in the thick of things in as far as disseminating, information, as well, just, empowering the youth in as far as sexual reproductive health rights are concerned. Do you think that we have done enough to ensure that our youth get this information, and is it helping them in making better choices?
What I can say is that we are a work in progress. For now, we are experiencing a lot of changes and a lot of push and pull from policymakers to religious leaders, and we're also saying parents should have a role to play in this. But as an organization, we believe it is the role of everyone in the community to make sure that young people are informed about their bodies and they can be able to handle challenges that come with it. So I can say for now we are doing well, because Kenya has many policies that speak on reproductive health. The only problem is that we are having opposition here and there, and that is one thing that we need to address, especially matters concerning our values and attitudes towards sexual reproductive health. Yes.
Now, Martin there, who came on board before you did, said in his opinion is that when children are adolescents, when they get to that adolescent stage, then that is the appropriate time to have this conversation so that they can understand, the biology of their bodies and such, and, the implications of, of decisions that they may take. What is your take? What is the appropriate age to start having these conversations?
As I can say, there is no definite age to start this conversation, but it's upon the parents and the teachers to know how the developmental stages of young people. I can say it depends with the context, first of all. A young person in Nakuru in a certain estate is different from a young person in Nairobi in another estate. So this information is socially constructed, and young people learn from the people around them. So I can say it is the role of the parents to know how their children are progressing as they develop, and they can give them information depending on their age, so that you don't end up talking about everything and making the kid to become more curious. So it is age appropriate, because there is no definite or a standardized age where we can say by age this and this, you're supposed to begin this information. But you can tell from the way the kids are behaving, from the way our children are responding, and other challenges that have come about by development, like social media, the interactions we are having. So when we say it is age appropriate, we can say it from age 10, because they are also learning about reproductive system in biology. They can also be taught about the social aspects of it. As we have in Kenya, our system is concentrating so much on the biological part of it, we are forgetting about the social, and presently due to COVID-19, we have seen the issues of psychological coming up, and it's affecting the mental health of young people. So that is it.
You have mentioned very key issues there. The issue that policymakers seem to be pulling in different directions. And one of the issues, or rather the crux of this conversation and the drift, is the issue and use of, contraceptives. It has been a very thorny issue, but it would, contraception and modes of contraception actually squarely fall on the issue of reproductive health rights. As someone who is within this, value chain, What is your opinion? We had even the government trying to roll out, the HPV vaccine that was very controversial, having been tested across the globe with, different repercussions, or rather results going forward. From where you sit, issue of contraceptives. Should we give our children, should youth access contraception?
Yes, what I can say about contraceptive is that the public and all stakeholders need to understand some of these interventions are based on evidence and research that we collect. And you see, a young girl who has started menstruating can get pregnant anytime they have unprotected sex with someone who is also mature enough to impregnate them. So if a girl is menstruating, I think she should have access to contraceptive, but it is not like we are just giving them contraceptive. When you talk about access to reproductive health services, these service providers have also been trained on youth-friendly services, whereby they begin with pre-counseling first of all, to understand the situation that this young person is in and why they need to access this contraceptive. From where I sit, I've seen so many young girls coming to access contraceptive, but after assessment, the nurse can be able to advise them and counsel them to make informed choices. And it's not like everyone is being forced to have these contraceptives. The other thing is that we also respect the client's rights, and we understand the context of which they come in. And when we understand all these things, we can be able to provide contraceptive to those ones who you see they really need it, and it can be able to protect them from unplanned pregnancies. Because if a girl comes for contraceptives, it means they have knowledge and they have a plan about their life. It is not like they are careless. It is something, and it's an entry point to advise them and talk to them so that they can be able to understand the implications of teenage pregnancies around them. So that is a good entry point for young people to come in and access services. And it is not that we force the contraceptives on them, but there's a lot which goes on in the consultation room. Mm-hmm. There is counseling for these young people. We share about the side effects of these contraceptives so that you can make them make informed choices. Mm-hmm. And when you look at this, it is evidence-driven, and we should not make a lot of values around these issues so that you can be able to have these young people accessing adequate services. Mm-hmm. So I can say it is a very good entry point to have better conversation with these young people, like what the MCA shared earlier.
Thank you very much. That is Kevin Karuga from Nakuru, who works with the Family Health Option Kenya, and he's a youth coordinator. He feels that, the issue of age appropriateness is relative depending on exposure, as well as the issue of contraception is also an entry point to just offer non-medical reproductive health information. Thank you very much, Kevin. Still stay on the line. We have so much to discuss. Mike, introducing my other guest, not second actually. Good morning. Kindly give us your name and where you're live from. Rebecca, good morning. Tell us where you are live from.
Good morning to you. Well, my name is Rebecca James, and I work for Stretchers Youth Organization in Mombasa County. And as Stretchers Youth Organization, we are basically focusing on issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, especially on the issues of policy advocacy. So we also do mentorship to these young girls, the adolescents and the young girls. And as the conversation is ongoing, we can say that there's no exact age how to start this conversation on sexuality. Because as my colleague said that depending on how these children are behaving, because from age of 9, you find that these young girls are really sexually active. So it is very true that parents need to take the responsibility and talk to their children. And also now that COVID is here with us, we understand that the teachers are not around again to stay with these children. Whom are we supposed to blame with all these teenage pregnancies around us in the community? Parents are the ones who are very close to their children, and so they're supposed to take their responsibility. So we have a lot of policies regarding sexual reproductive health, right? Including the sexual reproductive health policy. We have, as Mombasa County, we have a policy known as Mombasa County Adolescent Sexual Reproductive Health on HIV and SRA that was launched in 2018. And this is a policy developed by the young people themselves through different conversations with adolescents. As Stretchers Youth Organization, we had conducted adolescent symposium where we met over 400 adolescents who were able to share their needs, who were able to share some of the challenges that they go through. And from this forum, we found that they came up with a recommendation. And the recommendation was that they need a policy that they can own on themselves. And this policy is where we came up, we developed it, and we launched it. And last year, we also developed the implementation framework of it. So you found that in Mombasa County, most of the programs regarding sexual reproductive policy are based or are in line with this AYP strategy that is supposed to be implemented at the county level. And we found that most programs are owned by the youth themselves, are owned by the youth.
Rebecca Cheng, thank you for that feed, but it seems we're having a bit of a static on your feed and would want you to remain on the line. I hope it stabilizes, because from where you sit, I'd want to understand what are the hurdles in accessing non-biased medical reproductive health, information. You've said that you have come up with policies, and youth are saying that they need to have policies that they can own. As a person who's already in this value chain, what are the hurdles in accessing non-biased medical, medical reproductive health info in regard to this conversation that we're having? Rebecca. It seems we have a problem with that particular feed, but introducing my other guest, that is Patrick Maratani. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Now let's have this conversation. So far, the questions we're asking is that then, we've already established that indeed we need to have this conversation with our young adults and adolescents so that we can address issues that we're seeing, teenage pregnancies and such. Tell us, Patrick, tell us where you're live from and give us your feed in regard to what has been highlighted here, that contraceptives do not necessarily mean that, they're not so bad. It doesn't mean that we are forcing our children or rather making them promiscuous, but it also provides an entry point to give guidance and counseling to these particular children. What is your take, Patrick?
Thank you. Actually, my names are Pius. My name is Pius Nyongesa Maratani.
Okay.
Talking right from Nakuru County, and I'm a father of 4. Well, going straight to the point, you find that the contraceptives, actually, they have no problem. But now the age, we need to understand at what age can we introduce these kids or the children about the contraceptives. As the speakers have said earlier, it is very important to start at least at the age of adolescence. But in the beginning, we should have a stage where we introduce the lessons slowly by slowly, because their brains are growing. If we can just allow or start teaching our children these contraceptives education, it will have to be sometimes not be taken well, because at early age they might not understand. So you need to introduce from the age of 7 to 10, you introduce them to the maturity standards and also the education about the sex generally, as you filter some important questions or some important information. Otherwise, after the adolescence, maybe at a teenager is when you start introducing to them and how they should use them well. Because I'm not doing it because I'm a staunch Christian, but at least to understand, because they can end up misusing them. And these are the results why they think that they can do it anyhowly and then they can control. But because of that, at the end of it, they are misusing the opportunities.
Now, Pius Muratani, you're a father of 4. As a parent, have you had this conversation with your children?
Yes, I do it every day. Even those who are out now, I always text them, I always call them, and at least in a given time we sit down, we discuss, and at least have some lessons and understand. Because The problem is that what we need to understand is that our kids, actually, especially the teenagers, are born to be rebels or are at the stage of rebels, meaning it is a very active stage where you think they think. And if you are not very careful, you'll end up get crashing with them or not understanding them. And it is very bad because they can take it wrongly. But if you sit down, reason with them, and also realize that you are also in that age. So you should not harass them, but listen to them, because many times they always make the wrong decisions because they don't have somebody to talk to. But if the parents are available, you listen to them, you will get more information from them. And they are very informative, by the way, at that stage.
Now, before I let you go, Piers Maratani, in your experience as a parent, what were the main concerns, from your children in regard to this issue, of sexual reproductive health and their rights? Just giving them, what concerns did they have? Piers, it seems we have lost you, but we'd have wanted to know from...
Yeah, the first thing is that
we were just wanted.
Okay,
we wanted to
you can
know.
Get me?
We wanted to find out in your, as a parent, and you've said you've already had this conversation with your children. What were their primary concerns in regard to this matter? Sexual reproductive health rights and such. What were their main concerns?
Okay, they want to discover a lot, especially what they are seeing on the media and around them. So that makes them at least, or maybe going beyond and not controlling themselves so much. And also the understanding. Most of them, you talk to them, they will tell you that their parents are not understanding. You see, they have valid reasons why maybe they can fall into problems or temptations. So I would urge all the parents to understand their kids and lower their tempers, because making a mistake is not bad, but repeating a mistake is bad. So it will be good if all parents can listen to them, can reason with them, then they will get more information and it will be able to control them. We can only win this war by intelligence, not talking tough, not behaving so rough.
Thank you very much, Piers, for that in-depth, opinion feedback into regard to the sexual reproductive health rights. I hear you saying that parents have to be present and they have to be ready to tackle these conversations. And our children right now are trying out what they are seeing on social media. Other issues. Now, the issue of technology and how technology can influence the reproductive rights space. My next guest this morning, we're going to be tackling that issue, the aspect of technology and its impact, or rather influence, on reproductive rights space. Okay, now we go back we had Steve Owiti, who is live from Kisumu County. Good morning, Steve, once again.
Good morning again. Thank you so much for bringing me back again.
Yeah. Now, what is your take in regard to use of technology, Steve? What is your opinion, or what is your feedback or your feel in regard to the use of technology and how it has influenced the reproductive rights space?
As we speak, I want to tell you there's a lot of information out there in the social media and on the internet that is available to our children. And I would tell you for sure, there's no way we are going to assume the role of technology in bringing up our children. As we speak, I'll tell you, sometimes I look at my teenage young people, my teenage children. They are there, people in the family, and everybody's having their phone. You don't know what they're doing with it. Everybody's chatting. People are sitting in one place, nobody's talking to each other. And that is even extended to the adults, where you even find a group of people, they are sat on a table. You thought they had gone out even to discuss something. Everybody's busy using their phones. And that means the kind of information, there's a lot of information that is available to our children. But I want to say that there is a role that we need to play as leaders and as parents. But the problem is, are we really aware of what we are supposed to do? Most parents would want to talk to their children, but do they have the right information that they can give to their children? Are they really prepared as parents or as leaders to face the people and face the younger generation. I've been following this conversation, and there's a lot of things that has come up. I want to say it's good to have the accurate information, but must also be laced with the right values. And when we come to this, sexual awareness is something very important that I want to say should not be starting at the adolescent age. Look at the children of 5 years of age. Look at what they are able to watch, what they know, the kind of questions, the kind of dances we see on the social media. If we are going to wait until they get to the teenage age so that we start talking to them, I want to say we would be late. We must start talking to our children as early as 5 years of age so that what they know, what they see, they get the right perception towards how life is. Otherwise, if we are going to cover our faces and assume that these things are not there. I also want to say there are other points that I would call them the bone of contention. The other issues that have been a lot of issues about, that's the contraceptives and the abortion that is in this reproductive health bill. Naturally, as Africans and as Christians, we are very fearful when it comes to the discussion of abortion. But the problem is it's happening. How are we going to also close our eyes and assume that do not do it, do not do this, if you're not willing to tackle the bull by the horn? I want to ask and urge parents and even the leaders that as we prepare to talk to the children, can we also prepare the children, can we also prepare the parents and even the leaders so that we can even in our local assemblies, we call them county assemblies, we can come up with bills that will be able to protect our children from unnecessary information, because the exposure that we have, the kind of things that the children are exposed to, the kind of things that the youths are exposed to, that information, we must come up with a way that will be able. Otherwise, if you're going to assume some of these things, technology is already taken over, and you find that most of the parents that we have today are parents that have replicated their roles to technology. Most of the things we leave the children learn on the internet, and we're not even able. Sometimes they are even much more aware than the parents. Some that you are not even able to see what they are seeing. I remember one incident where a parent had given the phone to one of the sons, and the sons decided to go into those pornographic sites and started downloading. Unfortunately, the person decided as the boy downloaded those things, he sent the pornographic images to different WhatsApp groups, which was a big embarrassment, even to the church groups. So some of these things, do you need to know? What is it that my son is doing or my daughter is doing with the phone, or my niece? What sites are they with? And then sometimes we have to talk to them so that we cannot force them. As the other has already mentioned, we must make them understand that this is the right value, and that must be inculcated at a tender age when they're still able to adapt. You can only train a tree when it's still young. It gets to a point where you can now, when it's bent, you cannot. So that brings me back to my point that as we discuss these things, the age is not that teenage. The age goes back as soon as the child is aware of their sexual being. We must start training them and giving them the right information so that as they grow, they are aware of what is expected of them. Otherwise, we'll not bring up a strong society.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Steve, there for that insight. And just before I let you go and introduce Esther once again to this conversation, we've had cases that have been highlighted by mainstream media where the parents are somewhat perpetrators of some of these issues. We have a situation where parents are sending out their children, to go fend for the family, like, hey, you're going out, come back with something to eat, or hey, I do not have money to buy for you sanitary towels. So girls in different counties, different parts of the country are forced to trade in sexual favors to just get basic amenities such as sanitary towels. As a leader, as a parent, what is your take on that, and what is the way forward?
I want to tell you that is very wrong. And I want to give you a typical example we have in Kisumu. As a leader in Kisumu, we have a discussion going on about there are girls as young as 7, 8, 12 years, who you find on the streets in the evening towards the left, before the curfew used to be there, used to find girls on the streets selling the so-called liquid soap. Some are even selling the boiled maize at night. And you are wondering at what point do these girls get back home and how safe they are. So some of these things, when we send our children, it's because we have failed parenting. A number of in society today, most parents are not taking their responsibilities as it should be. And when we send out our young children to go and fend for themselves so that they can be able to buy as basic things as sanitary towels, we are telling the society that we have failed. And I think these are some of the things that we as leaders, from wherever we sit, we cannot allow and see go on. And that's why in our assembly, I'd even asked that we had already moved a statement, and the motion is soon coming up so that before the curfew, before the COVID pandemic came in, we were having a very serious problem with our young girls and young children roaming the streets at night in the pretext that they are selling the boiled maize and all those kind of liquid soap. And there were people who were preying on them. And as you have already put it, there are even parents and there are even relatives that are preying on their young girls and boys. I think those are some of the things that we, from wherever we say, as this conversation goes on, we must also ensure that we are realistically involved and we are also aware of some of the basic things that happen in our families that we need to cover. But I still say, all these, as we look at them, how prepared are we as adults, and that is as parents and as leaders, to tackle these problems? Some of the things are, as I said, there are people who are willing. They want to talk about the sexual reproductive health, the issues of sexuality of our children, of our young adults, and the rest. But the preparedness, I think, as we focus on this, we must also now look at our parents, the caregivers. We must tell them that this is the right information that we need to give to them and prepare them so that they go out there readily. Because sometimes when you are confronted with the children or even the young people, sometimes it's because you don't have the right information. You may not be able to talk to them or give them what they need.
Thank you very much, Steve Owiti there, live from Kisumu County, who is a member County Assembly there, saying that this is a collective responsibility, especially for the grown-ups, that is a parent, leaders and such. Now we want to hear from an expert and especially highlight this issue when it comes to menstrual health. I'm joined by Esther Mbogwa-Kimemia, who is an author of menstrual health and an author and also a menstrual health advocate, as well as an endometriosis ambassador. Good morning, Esther. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thank you.
Great to have you back on board. We've highlighted that particular issue where you're finding that girls have having to trade in sexual favors to just get basic amenities like sanitary towels. The conversation about providing sanitary towels is something that has taken too long to actually be implemented in our schools. From where you sit, then because this situation has taken far too long in the 21st century, and still sanitary towels in our public schools or schools is not considered a basic, we have the government providing condoms, but the government is not providing sanitary towels. And then how then is this affecting menstrual hygiene from where you sit?
I think it's absolutely sad that menstrual health is not a priority because we don't choose to menstruate. Menstruation happens. Sex is optional, but menstruation isn't. So it's something that we'll have to keep lobbying for until our voices are heard. I think the issue around hygiene it's complicated because even if you opted for non-disposable, reusable products, we still have the issue of sanitation in terms of water. So in trying to fix a problem by saying we have a product that is reusable, we might not have access to clean water or soap, or even be able to hang out our product in the sun. So this does cause an issue. We have women rags or like jute to just make a pad as well, and that does cause infections as well. But because we don't really talk about menstrual health, we talk about the pad, but we don't really educate girls on what is normal and what is not normal. Like if I use a pad and I have a reaction, what am I supposed to do? Another thing is giving a girl only one packet of pads. Sometimes it's not enough. So they're forced to use something else to back her up. Or we also have issues of girls who have a very heavy flow. So the 8 pads in the packet are not enough to go through the 4 or 5 days as well. So as much as we are pushing for the government to give pads, we also need them to hear us. We need them to hear us and come to the ground and ask these girls, how is your menstrual cycle? How does it go? Are you having heavy bleeding? Is it lasting 7 days long? If it is lasting for a longer time, is there access to actual health facilities where they can actually go and be seen by a doctor? And because we have a lot of stigma around menstrual health, women only go to hospital when they are in dire need. That's after very many years of actually suffering. So going back to hygiene, it's important. It is a basic need. And I wish men would fight for us as vocally as women do, because
actually you've just
not
picked
optional.
that out of my next question here. And as far as when we've seen that there's been a concerted focus on, whenever we're talking about sexual reproductive health, we focus on women, on the female gender. Is this the right time? What is the role of men in this conversation? And you've rightly put it, the issue of menstrual hygiene should not just be left to the women. We are the ones who go through that biological phase. However, the men folk need to come up, stand up, and get counted in this issue. Then, is there the role that men can play in as far as sexual reproductive health is concerned? Esther?
I think there definitely is. I think when men speak, more people listen. And we have had men who have come up. We have King Kaka, we have ASSW as well, which is providing safe sanitation to women, not just in Kenya, not just in Mombasa, but in different places in the world. But we need to come together, because they are our wives, they are our mothers, they are our sisters, they are our daughters who need these products. It's not just about a woman far away, but it's also about the women who are close to us, the women we interact with every day. So men can come.
Now, it seems we have a bit of static there, interruption with our feeder there, with our contributor at the moment. That is Esther Mbogwa Kimemia, who is live from Mombasa County. She's an author and a menstrual health advocate, as well as an endometriosis ambassador. Her take home is that men need to stand up and get counted. And she says, when men speak, more listen. The role of men in as far as sexual reproductive health rights are concerned. Esther, you were saying, now we have you back online.
Yes, so I hope that men will stand up for women, like they would stand up for their wife, or they would stand up for their daughter, whether they have access or not. They will stand up for those who do not have access, because they are women at the end of the day, and they could be our future sister-in-laws, our daughters-in-law. But it's just to stand and humanity to come together and say that, you know what, women's rights matters. Menstrual hygiene rights matters as well.
Now, as we work towards the tail end, towards winding up this particular broadcast, the issue of the boy child and their involvement in as far as sexual reproduction is concerned. Has the boy child been left behind? The mainstream media has been focusing on a story highlighting that happened in Muranga, where a 17-year-old boy impregnated his teacher. And last week, we had one of our contributors, who happens to be the executive director of CRAC, that is Mr. Timothy Ekese, saying in his opinion is that the rights of the boy were violated in this case. Then the issue of the boy child and the boy child getting empowered in as far as sexual reproductive health is concerned. Introducing my guest. My next guest, Rebecca Achieng, who happens to be, one of the players within that particular space in as far as sexual reproductive health is concerned. Rebecca Achieng, glad to have you back on board. Now, the role of the boy child, or rather the men folk, in as far as sexual reproductive health rights and such is concerned, have they been left behind? And if they have, because the general feel is they have, then what role can they play going forward to ensure that, we curb some of the things that we're seeing, increased teenage pregnancies, gender-based violence, issues of forced child marriages and such? How can we rope in the men in this discussion?
Well, thank you once again for this opportunity. I just want to say that it is very key for men to be involved on the issues of menstruation, because many a times we focus on girl child, but remember, for a girl to be pregnant, there is a man behind it. So as men involvement on the issues of menstrual hygiene management, we have an aspect, as an organization, we have an aspect of men involvement, and we have somebody known as the period man. The period man is under Stretchers Youth Organization, and his aim is to ensure that men have good information or the correct information on the issues of menstrual hygiene management, and they are able to support girls in the community. So in the past few months, we've been having this initiative, picking or collecting pads from the well-wishers and community, or from different organizations, and distributing to the community members. In June 12th and 13th, we had Men for Period Conference. The first Men for Period Conference was conducted by the Period Man together with partners from County Government of Mombasa and Stretchers Youth Organization. So this Men for Period Conference was very key to ensure that male are brought on board, so that they understand that it is very important for these girls to be supported by by themselves, because we understand not all girls live with their mothers, not all girls with their aunts or sisters. Some live with fathers, some live with uncles, some live with brothers. So if this man goes for shopping and does not include sanitary pad in his shopping list, then it means we lose options in order to get the sanitary pad. And the other option is to engage in sex for pads. So we are trying to ensure that there is no more sex for pads. So that's why we involve these men. So in October, we'll also be having the Girls Summit. The Girls Summit is not only for the girls, but we are also bringing the boys on board to ensure that they take initiative of supporting the girl child, so that they also help those men who are at Kampunji. You see, there are men who sit down and discuss several issues. We ensure that when they're discussing the issues of menstruation, and then something else, we understand that these girls used to get sanitary pads from school. Now that schools are closed, the sanitary pads are not brought to the community. It is the duty of the county government or even the national government to ensure that the pads that were used to be distributed in schools are now brought in the community, and these girls are able to access the pads from the community. So we also need the issues of budget allocation to ensure that the county government or even the national government, to ensure that there is allocation of budget on the issues of menstrual hygiene management. Because we understand there was a policy on MHM policy that was launched by the CS during the International Day of Menstrual Hygiene Day on 28th May. This menstrual hygiene policy is supposed to be domesticated at the county level, so that we ensure that it's not only happening at the national level, but also at the county level. So as I conclude, I said that it is very key for these men to be involved on the issues of menstrual hygiene management, so that they may help us also fighting the issues of teenage pregnancy and increase of new HIV infection and STI infection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Brenda Cheng, there for your take in regard to the issues of sexual reproductive health rights. Now, as we come to a close, we want to wrap up this conversation with our guest, Kevin Karuga, who is live from Nakuru. Kevin, good morning once again. Kevin?
Good morning.
Great. Now, I'd want you to give us the parting shot as the youth coordinator, at the Family Health Option Kenya. These conversations we've had from parents, we had from leaders, we've had, from stakeholders in general. We find ourselves in very difficult times. Children are at home for the next 6 months. Concern and statistics indicate that whenever children close for the school year, even before COVID, we had a rise and increase in teenage pregnancies. You are within this distribution, or rather what you call a supply chain. What is your take, and what role can conversations around sexual reproductive health rights have? What impact can they have in just the future, securing the future of the youth as we continue having these conversations?
Okay, thank you once more. One thing I would like to say is I like what the Honorable Awiti shared earlier. As policymakers, as religious leaders, as stakeholders in this sector, we are all parents and we all have children to take care of. When you go back home, you become a parent. So that is one of the other things that can tell us and can make us see this is something that needs a multi-sectoral approach. And within our counties and in the country, we really need to enforce the Sexual Offences Act, because all these teenage pregnancies that we talk about, the ones that we see the statistics, are as a result of defilement. Whenever a teenager gets pregnant, that is definitely defilement, and it's against the Sexual Offences Act, and action should be taken. And in as much as the law it needs a lot of reviews and a lot of repeals here and there, one thing we have to ensure is that as parents and as stakeholders, we need to start educating our children from the level at which they can understand. The MCA shared about that. Issues of menstrual hygiene can also be an entry point for us as parents and as the influential people in the community to start this conversation among young people. So there is no one definite approach to address all these issues, but we have evidence and we have strategies that can be able to work for us. I cannot say religious leaders are not working, but religious leaders should remember they also have a role to play. When you look at the Reproductive Health Bill, which is being sponsored by Honorable Kihika, it is one of the few bills in Kenya that has mentioned the spiritual guidance, the mentorship of these young people, and this is a very key bill that can ensure we have a multi-sectoral approach to addressing these issues. The other thing is that comprehensive sexuality education is not only about sexuality. In fact, the first is usually about gender. And when you discuss about gender, you discuss about a lot of things. We have sexual citizenship, which can educate young people to know where their rights begin and where their rights end, and how they can be enablers of these problems that we are having, such as teenage pregnancies. So I cannot say we have one definite way to deal with this, but parents are the nearest people to start conversations with these young people. We have several entry points, and as I conclude, I can mention, if you have a teenage girl, if you start addressing issues of menstrual health and hygiene, it can be an entry point for you to discuss about relationships, about gender-based violence, and about many other things that are affecting young people. If you have a boy child, you can start discussing from a point of relationships, because we see young men indulging in drug and substance abuse, and those are the points that parents need to utilize so that they can have these conversations. And as we all know, what the mother or the father shares with their children, it goes a long way in their lives. And this can be one of the best ways to address all these problems that we are having before we get even to the government. So we can start from a family level, and I will proceed to other levels of the society. So that is my take today.
Thank you very much for ending that conversation this morning with that powerful note, and borrowing heavily from what our guest Esther there had said, that if parents are not talking, it doesn't mean the youth are not listening. They are finding other means and ways of getting that information. A conversation that also Steve Witi from Kisumu County as a leader says that this is a high time we took a multi-sectoral approach to address this issue of sexual health, sexual reproductive health. And the issue of age appropriateness is not necessarily pegged on the age or gender, but on the level of exposure. That if you're talking to that girl who is just has already started her menstrual cycle, then that is an in point. If that young man, that boy who is under your care or is your child, has started breaking their voice, this is a high time that you shared information about the changes that they are expecting. Challenge there from Kevin Karuga from Nakuru, saying that conversations that are held between parents and their children last a lifetime. So it's a challenge to parents to take on this conversation that had been previously thought as being taboo, but we have seen, or rather we are reaping from that particular decision. Currently the country is just coming to terms with the increased number of teenage